right, another busy week in the Tesla and otherwise news cycle. How you doing, Bradford?
Doing good. Trying to catch up.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's kind of funny when we're busy just with the day-to-day trading and stuff like that. How much stuff is still going on? So we got rumors of some equipment changeover in Giga Texas, potentially hinting to a new model that would be coming out shortly. So we'll share a little bit about that. We got some FSD Sweden spiciness and a few other things. So where do you want to start it today?
Let's start with Iran.
All right, we're throwing in the wild card. Let's go straight for the controversial topics and see how quickly we can get canceled.
That's right. So we haven't really discussed this. I'm just going to throw you a big curveball, get
All
your
right.
reaction. What do you think impact to Tesla? I know there's loss of life and some human suffering, and the strikes in general seem pretty targeted by Israel. Iran seems to be missing in general and getting civilians, but beyond that damage, what do you think the impact to Tesla is?
I don't think any of that has an impact on Tesla. I think those are two separate things. So yeah, I think that'd be a tenuous claim. What do you think is the impact to Tesla?
Well, some potential impact would be if oil prices were to go up and stay up for a prolonged period of time. Some people might reconsider getting an EV if gas were to suddenly go to $5 a gallon. Also, if the Strait of Hormuz closed, that could have some impacts on global trade. There's quite a bit of trade that goes through there. At least 3% of containerized traffic goes through the Strait of Hormuz, and a fair bit of oil does.
Yeah, so those are indirect kind of demand side things. I think that's I don't know. It almost seems dismissive of the broader human situation going on there to kind of talk about the impact of Tesla on that. I think it's I understand why Israel's doing it. I think it actually makes sense given how destructive Iran has been, and their stated goal is essentially the elimination of the Israeli state. I can certainly understand why they would want to take this rather unique opportunity that they have to eliminate that regime. I think Trump is doing what he can to support Israel while not getting American troops directly involved. So it's an interesting situation, but I wouldn't want to come at it from the Tesla angle personally.
So I just want to share a little bit of some information I've been following. It's pretty clear that Israel has air superiority over Iran. Yesterday, they were flying a drone in plain sight right over Tehran. And the types of strikes that their planes are doing shows that they have time to be opportunistic, and they're seeing things on the ground and targeting strikes on the ground of moving targets. So they're not just plugging in prepackaged strike data and dropping bombs from afar. Now that they've knocked out Iran's radar and other things, they're have air superiority and are more opportunistic. What I expect from Israel in the coming days is continuing destruction of Iran's ballistic missile capabilities, as far as being able to launch ballistic missiles at Israel. Curious if the U.S. does get involved or not, and what capacity that is. There's an opportunity now that Iran seems a bit toothless to be able to strike at Iran's nuclear capabilities even more forcefully. One of the sites is very dug in, and it would require U.S. bunker busting bombs in order to get at. Curious if you think anything about the risk of Iran getting upset with the U.S. Do you think there's some kind of risk to the U.S. and
And not particularly. I mean, this is getting a little geopolitical as opposed to what we normally talk about. So
Yeah.
we can touch on that briefly. I mean, if they do attack U.S. assets, I mean, think embassies or U.S. ships in the region. They do have some capability to do that. Then you're kind of Pearl Harboring the U.S. and maybe it wouldn't be quite that drastic, but you're essentially egging the U.S. on to take more decisive action. If they were to directly attack U.S. ships, say, then it'd be hard to imagine Trump not, putting U.S. planes in the air, or giving, allowing for use of bunker busters on those more hardened sites. And I think that's something Iran could do. If there's your back's against the wall and there's very likely chance that you're not going to make it. I mean, the whole an animal backed up against the wall is not likely to weigh risk reward decisions very well. But even still, that just that's almost a guarantee to provoke further U.S. action. So I think that's unlikely, but it's a very volatile situation right now.
I think I'm not a geopolitical expert nor a military expert. I do want that to be clear, but it seems like the Iran regime's days may be numbered. There's little that they can do in response to what Israel's doing now, and they're basically begging for talks, at least if the reports can be believed. So let's switch it back to Tesla.
Something a little more lighthearted, yeah.
And let's go right to this little juicy detail. So we won't tease people too long. So this is from Joe Techmeyer. He's a drone pilot. He's checking out Giga Texas on a daily basis. And he says large blackout curtains have been installed to shield views of the production floor to limit who can see what is going on. He also says there are rumors coming out about a production pause at Giga Texas from the 30th of June through the 4th of July for the holiday week. That's true, but maybe it could coincide with a new model. I don't think they would put up curtains in order to prevent people from seeing like a Model Y performance. I think it would be if they're changing equipment in a significant way, it could be that with no other changes. But I'm guessing we'll see some kind of different form factor or something with a different look.
Yeah. So the timing of this lines up well with, they said new models, including affordable vehicles, would be introduced by the first half of the year. So we got the updated S and X, which maybe we could talk about that in a second. Mm-hmm. But those would clearly not qualify as the more affordable vehicles, especially since they included a $5,000 price increase.
Yeah.
So there's clearly something else, and not only from the language in the letter, but they were also saying in the earnings call that the goal is to more fully utilize existing lines. So shutting down the existing factories, putting blackout curtains, bringing in new equipment, which I think we got a picture of some of the equipment that was being installed. Also, I mean, that all points to a very imminent model release, I would suspect. So I think this is probably coming. Maybe it didn't quite make first half of the year. I wouldn't be surprised if we actually get the launch in, July 4th or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I think it's going to be released, go right into production, and you can kind of order it right away for very quick delivery. So to me, that this all seems to make perfect sense and not really too big of a surprise. But it's good to see that there actually is some activity, and we're not just kind of hoping there's some secret skunk works somewhere. We do know that there's a changeover coming.
And I do want to point out this is on the third floor. And we don't really know about a manufacturing line on the third floor. There is some battery equipment and other equipment on the third and fourth floors, but if they are working on a compact or a cyber cab, it's probably on the third and or fourth floors. It's probably not going to go in on the first floor, which I think is fairly full or getting pretty full. And in the I think there's some stuff on the second floor too, but I'm not sure about that.
Yeah. So Tesla made the Made in America list. This is probably no surprise to anyone watching this, but still is information that's not widely recognized. The top 4 vehicles on the list are Teslas, unsurprisingly. I guess cool to see the Jeep Gladiator there. I think that's I think it's made in Ohio, if I'm not mistaken. I believe I've driven by that factory a couple times. But this is something like what percent of, if you just pulled the American population and you told them, okay, one brand has the top 4 American-made brands, like what percent of potential purchasers do you think would get that question right?
1%.
Probably the percent that's like in the Tesla nerdy community. I bet even a lot of casual Tesla owners don't realize that.
And Trump has been railing against Chinese EVs for a long time. So I'm guessing like even 40% of the American population probably thinks that Teslas are made in China, which is the opposite of the truth. They are made in China for Chinese buyers and some buyers in the Pacific and in Europe. But for the US, they are 80+% American made.
Yeah, and this is something like even on a lot of like energy podcasts and things like that I listen to, is just like misinformation even among kind of experts in the field. Is like, like, oh, Tesla imports all their cells from China, and so they're like really at risk. And like, okay, well, they do import some cells. That's definitely true, but they also make a fair amount at the Giga Texas. They're ramping up production of the 4680s. But like I've been listening to some like energy podcasts where like people were talking about the impact of the big beautiful bill and all the changes that's going to create. And like this one guy was actually directly asked like, why doesn't Tesla just manufacture their own cells? And he's like, oh, well, yeah, they just don't. They get them all from China. like well, so there's like so much misinformation out there, even about like wonky things where people should be a little bit more dialed in. Speaking of the big beautiful bill, though, it does cut EV credits. There's hope that we'd maybe get a little bit of relief with the Senate reconciliation version of the bill compared to what was in the House version. Instead, it's like full cuts to batteries. So Megapack would no longer be eligible for the ITC, which is a really big deal. I mean, that's 30% of the cost. Tesla's battery imports would have a little bit more trouble potentially. You'd have some import tariffs coming on those. And it's just, I think, generally some bad news for Tesla, which might be why we saw a bit of a slide, although it was a kind of interesting move in markets in general today. But some of the solar stocks got absolutely whacked. I was just telling you a little earlier today, Enphase, which was like a darling and was just like blowing out predictions, like quarterly earnings predictions and revenue growth targets, everything like that. Just like 2.5 years ago, it's now down to $35 a share. So it's got like one of those charts that's like, I gotta redo it where it's like this perfect hump where like they were just absolutely on fire, firing on all cylinders, and then like they're just back to where they were 5 years ago, basically. So a lot of solar stocks are on sale. First Solar got hit really hard today. I think it was down 18%, somewhere in that neighborhood. So this big beautiful bill is coming down hard on solar, which I don't love to see, to be honest with you. Any thoughts on what we've seen there?
No, I think you covered it well, and I'll just repeat that it's not true that Tesla gets a majority of their cells from China. That may be true for the Megapack, but it's not true for their vehicles, especially the ones that are made and sold in the United States. Majority of the batteries are made in Nevada, and a growing portion are made in Texas.
Yeah, so they're ramping up those 4680 lines, like we said, and that helps insulate from trade wars and that sort of thing. But still, getting rid of the EV credit doesn't help a lot. And this was something that was on one of the earnings calls that I think a lot of people missed. I want to say it was the Q4 call where they were talking about the cost of the 4680 relative to like the total landed cost of the CATL cells that they're importing. and they were basically saying that like even like with tariffs, their goal was to be close to competitive with the landed cost. So the 4680s, like while it's a good thing that they have them, it creates some supply diversity. It's not like every additional cell you get is like a direct contributor to the bottom line, because the imported Chinese cells are in fact cheaper. So it's helpful. I think it's more strategic than anything, but even with the tax credits, the 4680s were not, necessarily a slam dunk the way I certainly was thinking they would be, back after battery day, where it was, getting to $100 per kilowatt hour and then cutting that in half. And, that was the kind of goal back then. And with the Chinese cells reportedly being in like the sub $50 per kilowatt hour range, that's like really crazy. I honestly didn't think we'd get here so quickly on how much they've been able to drive down those costs. So that's pretty wild. I was listening to another energy podcast a while ago, and they were talking about the total landed cost of like a mega pack type product there, but like with the Chinese suppliers being sub $100 per kilowatt hour, which is like just crazy to think of, like, the inverters, the development cost, the housing, everything that goes into it. Obviously the cells on top of that, being able to deliver something like that for sub $100 a kilowatt hour, when, right now the mega packs I was thinking looked cheap at $250 per kilowatt hour. So they've been able to do some pretty cool stuff in the Chinese market there.
Yep. So Dana Hull seems to want to be on the wrong side of history with reporting on Tesla, but Ed Ludlow, he's tried out FSD, and he did some reporting on some truthful reporting on the autonomous capabilities of Waymo versus Tesla, and showing some of the really key differences. So between Tesla, Waymo, Uber, and Lyft, Tesla is the only one that can manufacture their own cars. Tesla is the one with the huge data lead, potentially 100 times more than Waymo's data that they have. Tesla can self-insure their cars for the most part, but Tesla is not running an autonomous fleet right now. So like that's the big dig that Waymo bulls or Google bulls have on Tesla right now. Is like, oh, who's running a successful fleet right now? Not Tesla.
I mean, it strikes me as the kind of claim that you'd be super happy about if you were like a Boston Dynamics bull from like 5 years ago. Like, look, like we got all these robots in the field. It's like you were like hand manufacturing these things at like a $500,000 cost or some crazy number like that. So, okay, first mover advantage doesn't mean much if your strategy doesn't scale. Like to have a winning, first mover advantage, you have to like get the beachhead, but then like sustain it and like advance out into the territory. It's kind of funny because like even looking at this future fleet size, 35,000 compared to 2,000 by 2026, it's like, oh gosh, yeah, you can really see that's a drastic increase in the capabilities. But that 35,000 also strikes me as like absurdly low by, let's say, year end 26, or maybe even mid year 2026. I think they'd probably be a bit higher than that. So it just like, even when the conservative estimate is more than an order of magnitude higher than where Waymo is going to be, it's pretty easy to see why the Tesla bulls are so enthusiastic about Tesla's scalability advantage here. So yeah, kudos to Ed for putting this. Table is really great to see. I mean, it's like something I'd expect, Sawyer Merritt or, one of us to put out there and post on X. So seeing it in Bloomberg Intelligence is pretty compelling, I think. Do you think it will change any minds?
Insider Intelligence that posted it, I'll tell you that. All right. So they had a joining infographic, and Jordan, I have a note for you in the private chat. But this was very interesting. It shows the average crash rate per million miles. So higher is worse. So that the zero autonomous is the US average, which is by far the worst. So human drivers are by far worse compared to Waymo. and Waymo is level 4 autonomy. And level 2 autonomy from Tesla is far better than Waymo. It's Waymo better, 7 to 8 times better than Waymo. And this is according to Bloomberg intelligence data and Tesla company filings. What did you think about this one when you saw this, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I hadn't seen the Waymo numbers, so that was actually pretty interesting. I mean, you never really hear about Waymo crashes that include an airbag deploying, but I guess that's probably just a game of numbers. I mean, if they've only got, what is it, 1,500 vehicles in the fleet, something like that right now, then a crash is obviously going to be extremely rare, especially because they seem to be. Somebody used a great word one time that was kind of describing the fact that they're it's overly conservative. So it's not nearly as aggressive of a driver as Tesla's FSD, which can be annoying if you've got to go somewhere in a rush. Like the Waymo is just going to be like very slow compared to a normal driver, but the Tesla is a lot more natural with the kind of movements and speed and that sort of thing. So the fact that it's the crash rate is this high, despite how conservative it's driving, is actually pretty surprising to me. I've heard a lot of people look at Tesla's safety numbers and like, oh, like they're inflating it with highway numbers, or they're like not including any things where like there's this conspiracy theory where that people thought Tesla was turning off autopilot like a split second before a crash was detected so that it wouldn't impact these safety stats, and like that's just demonstrably false. I think that's like anyone who's done the research on that theory kind of knows that that's not true now. So I love seeing Bloomberg actually report on this so clearly, including the details around Tesla, where like if you read the Tesla, little asterisk there, and then you look at Waymo, it's to me it's pretty compelling that like this is not just manipulated numbers to make Tesla look good.
Yeah. It's great to see the truth finally get out there. There was something a little controversial. We saw Tesla get activated on the Texas autonomous vehicle state website, and Waymo, they only are approved for the Austin city limits, which are quite small. But when you look at Tesla's approval, they're approved for the Austin metropolitan area. So if we have that, great to see it. So obviously Tesla is not running a Robotaxi fleet yet that we know about. They might be offering some rides to their employees. So here the red is Waymo's service area, which I drew on with my finger. So it's a little slightly imprecise, but it's pretty close to where the lines were for the Austin metro area. Austin city limits. Whereas the yellow in this case is Tesla's service area that they're going to be approved for. And on the southeast side is where the Tesla Giga Texas factory is. So if they're helping people commute to and from that factory as a part of their rollout, their service area might be fairly big. But this was pretty controversial. Maybe go ahead and step in, Matt.
Yeah. So, my first reaction when I saw this was like, seems unlikely to me that they're actually going to start, with an area this wide, especially considering how limited their vehicle supply is going to be. So said another way, if they've only got like 10 vehicles, you don't need a service area this wide. You could basically just have those dedicated to the downtown Austin area, roads that are, very well, I don't want to say mapped, but, where the system performs extremely well in those areas. So while they may be approved for that, that larger Austin metro area, I would suspect that they won't start, with like rides that are quite so broad. But I'm just really curious to learn more, honestly. Like, we're kind of in this area where we're speculating about what's going to happen. We're going to have the answers like very, very soon. So
yeah,
I'm excited to start seeing some of those first, paying customer reviews roll out, and actually see some videos of what it's like and what the actual restrictions are. What does the app look like? So it's pretty exciting stuff. But I don't know, what's your thought on where they're authorized to go versus, maybe where they would in practice start?
So I'm doing my finger in the wind estimate here.
I was wondering what you were doing. It was kind of hard to tell when you were small there. It's like, is your finger okay?
Yeah,
Does it taste good?
I think the Waymo portion on that map is less than 300 vehicles, based off of their total fleet size. I'm guessing it's less than 250. Once Tesla gets up to 1,000 vehicles, and I'm hopeful they can do that in 3 months. Maybe I'm a little too optimistic, but hoping they're by 1,000 vehicles in 3 months and maybe 5,000 or 10,000 by year end. I think they can serve that larger area. So it's more about looking ahead toward like the very near future. And that's what you have to do as an investor. Like, we know what's coming. Maybe Waymo bulls don't want to believe it because Tesla's currently still at this number. Oh, you're at zero. You're at zero. Well,
0 to 1 is the hardest. No, I think that's a really good point. Like, if your plan is to roll out aggressively and go from 10 to 100 to 1,000 in a couple of weeks, months, then you want the regulatory approval to be as broad as possible.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good sign that they have that broad regulatory approval. I do still think they'll start with the smaller fleet in the downtown area. Maybe venture out a couple times, like maybe accept a trip way out to the suburbs at some point, just to kind of see how it handles it. Increase that over time, and then when they feel it's safe enough and they've worked out any kinks that they might have, then just dump in more cars. So honestly, it's so exciting, especially considering that the Giga Texas factory is right there. I mean, they'd be able to saturate that market in a week, which is pretty exciting. I mean, down the road, there's this weird tug of war. I'm seeing a lot of this on X, and I feel it myself personally, of the fundamentals are really terrible. Brand damage seems to have been a real thing. Demand is very weak right now across the entire product line. But if you've got this demand lever, I guess, where you can just start putting a bunch of Model Ys into a new city and have it, generating revenue and further optimizing your manufacturing economics, that's a kind of advantage that is very hard to appreciate. I mean, even if Waymo were to roll out that aggressively, think of the capital costs and just how painful that would be financially for Google to fund that. But for Tesla, that's a business model optimization thing. That's actually an upside for them.
I do want to mention some benefits that Tesla has, and Robert Scoble, reminded me of this. So Waymo, they pay for their own car. They pay for the software, or they're not getting paid by the customer directly, like an upfront fee or monthly fee for the software. And their engineers are having to do the tweaking of the model, the submission of the mistakes. Whereas Tesla, since they added the FSD software, but even before that, when it was only autopilot, the customer paid for the car. They paid for the software up front in many cases. Now there's a monthly, and the customers would send in their disengagements, their interventions, their voice notes. They could email Tesla, and they would do all this for free and provide their own Wi-Fi, because you're getting the software updates. You're encouraged to get your car on the Wi-Fi. So you got your car on the Wi-Fi, and then it's uploading data for free to Tesla, where this isn't the case for Waymo. Waymo's paying for all of this.
Yeah. I mean, it's like these bull arguments from 2018, 2019, when we were super excited about the stock, that it just bears repeating, because it's been such a long time since we were thinking about structurally the business model advantages that they have. So yeah, I'm super excited about this. One of the things we were talking about today, which I think would be good to repeat, is we're talking about the humanoid robot and all the different manufacturers and like how a figure, for example, if you've got a robot on the line, like doing work for, is it Mercedes, or I think that's Apptronic,
BMW.
They're
in
BMW.
South Carolina, yeah.
So like your job is to keep your customer happy, and so like if the plant is somehow running a little bit suboptimally because of your robot, then like your robot goes off the line presumably, because like they can't have that. They've got a plan to optimize. Tesla, on the other hand, like and this would be such an Elon move. He could just look at this situation and say, I don't care that the plant is running like more suboptimally right now. Optimus is actually the product that we want to optimize for at this moment. And so maybe you slow down or cause higher costs in your factory because you've got Optimus on the line, like learning how to do things, bumbling, but you get all that super valuable training data, and Tesla can just choose to optimize for that, and like getting Optimus to train faster and faster and winning that race. Even if it's at a somewhat substantial cost to the factory and to the existing car business, because they've got like the entire the entire thing is vertically integrated. The software, the manufacturing, and like they are their own customer with regards to the work that Optimus is doing, at least initially.
Tesla can put these Optimus in real factories. So instead of like a simulated mailroom or a simulated line where you're sorting things, they have factories in Buffalo, Nevada, Texas, California, China, Europe. They also have like all these sorting and distributions, parts, service that they can put the Optimus in and get all kinds of different training data. So one more about Robotaxi before we talk a little bit about Elon. So this one was from Owen Sparks. And this was earlier, or no, it's just today again.
I think Kristen might have screenshotted that from like a week ago, because that's been, I recall that one being a while ago.
It says a big step forward for sure. If I fly into June, into Austin by the end of June, would I be able to test out the network, or is it going to be invite only at first? And yeah, this is a recent screenshot of something that happened, I think, over a week ago. And Elon gave what happens to be a cryptic answer. He said, sure. Why is it cryptic, Matt?
Because it's not clear if that's open to Owen only or if it's open to anyone. It's quite generic, and I would personally love to know, if I fly into Austin in 2 weeks, will I be able to go? And I wouldn't feel comfortable enough to book a ticket just based on that post.
Yeah, and there's a June 22nd date Elon's excited about. We'll see if they hit that. They're wanting to open it to some people by then. Also, June 28th is a pretty exciting date. Tesla intends to drive a vehicle from the factory to a customer's driveway, essentially, or right next to their driveway. That would be really cool, especially if they could follow the vehicle the whole time and maybe do like some live coverage like the SpaceX people. I don't think they'll do it live, but it'd be cool if they got that video. Maybe a time lapse of that video would be super cool.
Yeah. I was just trying to find a post. I can't find it in time, but Case, our friend from the Netherlands, he's actually in Austin right now, and Josh West has been, I think that's his name, has been showing him around, and he's been shocked at how many of these robotaxis he's seen so far. So I think he just landed recently in the States, and so he's seen a ton of them on the road. So it's definitely good to see that there's so many of them coming up right now. That like it's just plain to see. Because I think I've only seen like 2 or 3 photos on X of these robotaxi sightings, so it still seems pretty rare. But it sounds like when you're actually on the ground and looking for them, you can see quite a few of them on the ground. So we are very close, and I'm looking forward to this being some old news rather than the thing that's been perpetually in the windshield, so to speak. And we are going to see Case. He's going to be at this Tesla Owners of Michigan event at the end of this week. So anyone who's interested and wants to go to Muskegon, which is Muskegon is the greatest spot to have a Tesla event I think you can think of. So check out your tickets. You can look for the Tesla Owners Club of Michigan, and they've got some information there. Should be a really good event. And I'm looking. Well, I'll probably try to record a video with Case about what's going on with all these FSD developments in Europe, because he really is the subject matter expert on everything that's going on there. And there was some pretty big news out of Sweden giving a frankly terrible reason why FSD would not be allowed in there. But Norway, on the other hand, seems to be encouraging FSD to actually develop there.
So Tesla tried to get approval in the city of Stockholm to just test FSD supervised, and basically they gave a very long-winded answer and said they don't even have the resources to think about it. Just a bad, bogus answer. Maybe they're ill-equipped to make any kind of decision, but it seems like, if you put the onus on Tesla, that should be enough. Sorry.
One of the things I picked up when I was studying languages, Jordan, can you put that post back up there? There's a what's called a passive voice here with the way that they've described it. Can we put that back up?
He might have taken it off.
Okay. Well, it was basically like, if you look at the substance of what they said, and it was basically like, considering based on this and in combination with the fact that the current test is the first of its kind, which entails certain risks for both infrastructure and third parties, and that it is planned to be carried out throughout the city of Stockholm considers it is currently not possible to approve the implementation of the test. Like, you didn't actually say, you kind of like tangentially pointed to a couple different things, but it wasn't like a very clear, like, they didn't meet this particular threshold, and our number one concern is safety, and the results that we've been tracking so far didn't meet the standards that we need, which are outlined here. Like, it was very indirect. And so it's like this passive tone, and it's like you're elevating it to this bureaucratic level where, the city of Stockholm deems that it's impermissible. Okay, well, who at the city of Stockholm? Like, whose decision was this actually? So it's just such a this is something I actually noticed a lot with some of the European regulations. There's a lot of this passive voice stuff, where there's not an actual direct thing, and there's like all these insinuations. Like, there was this one thing where who was that guy, Thierry Breton or something like that, who was like giving Tesla a bunch of crap, or X, because they weren't participating in like the censorship. Yeah. And it was like, I remember the way that these letters were worded. It was like, you are well aware, Elon, that there are certain requirements of which, Tesla or X is not, meeting the certain requirements as outlined. And Elon's like, I actually have no idea what you're talking about. What specifically is the problem? And like, Thierry never responded like directly, here's the problem. It was like these like very flowery, passive language. So that's like a big red flag I have is whenever you see that passive voice in any official document, I'm like, okay, there's some bureaucratic mess going on there.
I would like to blame this on committees. So like, whoever was the most conservative or scared in those committees, probably there's one or two or more committee members who were scared. They needed a safety blanket or something. All right. What's next here? Let's talk about Elon's bill of health. All right. So what are we looking at, Matt?
Well, I'm very bummed because Elon tested negative for ketamine, which I've been told over and over again that he was a problematic ketamine user. So yeah, I think this stock was down on the news that his ketamine use is actually negative. So that was a bummer. I think was it Whole Mars joke that like we need Elon to or somebody was joking about like the allegations that Elon was like a hardcore drug user, and yet he was still able to do all this like crazy stuff. It's like, that's actually like kind of hard to believe, these drugs that impair your ability to, think critically or to be motivated. Like it actually is completely at odds with the way Elon actually operates. I mean, like, maybe if the rumor was that it was like cocaine or something, and like who's always like hopped up, you could kind of see it. Like, there were some 80s bankers that got a lot of stuff done before they flamed out. But at his age, to have the work ethic that he's had for as long as he had, and to have accomplished the things he had, these allegations always seemed pretty crazy to me. And so kudos to Elon for actually posting that.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's an annual thing, but part of his deal of, I believe, having his national security clearance is around taking drug tests periodically. He did like 3 years ago, bare minimum, and I don't know how often it is, but good to see Elon did that. He challenged the reporters at the New York Times and others to take a drug test as well. I don't think we'll see that happen because they're projecting. All right, so let's go to something random. Got a 1.99 APR promotion on the Tesla all-wheel drive in the US till June 30th. So they extended that from June 16th. So
yep.
Trying to push on
got a bit of an
demand.
end of quarter push going on. It's nice. I think this just doesn't really move the needle. I mean, we've had all sorts of promotional discounts. To be honest with you, I'm a little bit bummed that the refreshed Model Y needs this type of promotions to be selling right now. I mean, it's the first quarter really where it's being delivered in any meaningful volumes, and so to see this kind of discounting, I think, is not a good sign for demand. So demand continues to disappoint. I think Troy Teslike again dropped his quarterly forecast. I think it was just this week. So not a good quarter. I don't think we've got coming up, which is juxtaposed by the fact that we're actually launching Robotaxis this quarter. So it's a bit of a weird situation where the fundamentals are deteriorating a bit while the thing that's going to change the business entirely is also launching. So good time for Robotaxis, because I think if we didn't have this on the corner right now, honestly, I think stock would be below 200 if it was just like, if we were on like some version of version 11, which was clearly not ready, and Elon was just saying like, oh, Robotaxis year end. Like, I don't know. That doesn't seem likely. Yeah. So I think Robotaxis is probably the only reason the stock is where it is right now. But that doesn't mean we think it's overvalued. In fact, the opposite.
We have a Tesla killer, a new one. This is the Nissan Leaf 2026. The performance, range, and charging. So I don't see performance here. I see range, essentially.
What I don't care about is miles per gallon equivalent. Why are we quoting that in 2025? Like, it's a totally meaningless number. I mean, maybe if you have a plug-in hybrid, it might mean something, but like comparing gasoline to electric is just really dumb. So I hope companies will stop doing that soon.
Yeah. I don't think this is a Tesla killer. It does look nice. I not sure what kind of vehicle this is. I think it's on the smaller side. It doesn't compete with the Model Y, but it's a hatchback, right? So it's like
looks like a 5-seater from that configuration.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it looks better than the old Leaf, that's for sure. I mean, the old Leaf was like really kind of ugly and utilitarian, I think. And I think that one had like a range of just over 100 miles. So this is a pretty major redesign. And honestly, I'm just glad that more companies are entering this space. I think it's only a matter of time before all vehicles are electric. They're just better. The transition is taking longer than I thought it would, admittedly, but it still seems very obvious to me that this is just the way that things are going to go. And as people experience not having to go to a gas station anymore and all the other benefits of owning an electric, I think just eventually everyone's going to realize that, yeah, that's a much better way of running. Is that only, that's a weird, I was like, why is there only one door handle, but it's got the second one is like on the pillar. So the most ridiculous thing about this, I thought you were going to jump into that. It's got 2 charge ports. Why? It's got the NACS, and then what's the other one? It's got like another version of the charging. Like that is just you could just feel, oh, J1772. Who needs that port? I don't know, but if you want two charging ports, then the Leaf is the one for you. It's just like it's one of those things where you can just feel the engineers designing by committee to be like, oh, we'll have the best of both worlds by having two charge ports. But like, why? Why not just have an adapter or something? It's just.
So Tesla stock today closed down $12.78 at 316.35, or down 3.88%. So you think mainly this was some kind of reaction to the ZEV credits being taken away? That is a source of profits for Tesla. I don't even think it's most of the credits that Tesla sells, but is Trump somehow getting rid of the credits in China and Europe as well for Tesla?
No, I mean, I'm not sure I'd attribute this move completely to that, but if you did look at the solar stocks, a lot of the energy stocks that are helped by the IRA, they all got hit really hard. So Tesla's move, when they were hit, kind of makes sense to me. But the market was weird today. It was kind of a mix of a few names up a lot, a few names down very large. So I don't know. Today seemed like an odd trading day. You've got the Iran uncertainty, with the whole Israel conflict, and might that escalate and cause some more turmoil in the markets. So I'm not sure I'd read too much into this move, on a one-day basis. But we've got an interesting couple of weeks coming up. I mean, I think we're going to have a Robotaxi launch next week. We're going to have the production and delivery reports the week after that, which is going to be pretty weak. Then we're going to have a new product launch. So a lot of volatility, and like we're going to have bits of news that I think are bearish and bullish kind of coming out in very close proximity. So I feel very ill-equipped to predict exactly what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, just because it's going to be such a narrative-based couple of weeks for the stock.
I guess one thing that we didn't talk about is the BYD situation. But first, let's talk a little bit about Tesla sales. So this is worldwide. So the Model Y is leading. Model 3 is number 2. This is for full battery electric vehicles. And a slew of BYD models trailing, despite being much lower priced than the Tesla cars. And if you look at the dollar, the dollar sales on this, like the lead that Tesla has is like stretch out even more, because the Teslas sell for at least 50% higher than their Chinese counterparts, if not like 100% or more higher price to the consumer. So I think this is even more impressive than what the actual chart shows.
Yeah, and if you extrapolated that further on the margin, I think a lot of these would go negative, and Tesla's lead would look even better, despite the fact that Tesla's margin has been, around chopped in half in the last couple of years, as demand has come down a bit. So yeah, it's a really interesting to look at all, and like all these companies, a lot of them are trying to pursue some autonomy stuff, and like autonomous solutions. Tesla really has the ability to scale everything better than any of these other companies. So my screen just went black. Can you still hear me?
Yep, I can still hear you. We're still good. And so BYD, this may be a rumor, it may be fake news, it could be a manufactured document, but allegedly they have made their own internal currency that they give to suppliers, where they, instead of saying, hey, suppliers, we're going to pay you in 9 months, instead of it just being like some kind of promise or something that you're kind of tracking in a ledger, they're allegedly sending these commercial notes to the suppliers, and then the suppliers need the cash because can't just wait 9 months for BYD to pay them. This is all alleged. It's from
BYD bucks.
Yeah, BYD bucks. So then these suppliers are allegedly going to banks and selling them, maybe selling them to other institutions. Doesn't if this is true, it's very bad news for BYD. But it goes to their power. Like maybe they're too big to fail, but even Evergrande, which was a huge real estate company in China, it's the biggest at one point in time. They ended up failing, and China allowed them to fail. Before we go broader, what do you think about the situation that BYD's in, and how, like, if you're a supplier for BYD, you're just kind of stuck?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of fits with the other breadcrumbs that we've heard recently about like extending out these payment terms so significantly. China seems like there's maybe some macro uncertainty brewing in China. There's a lot of red flags that seem to be coming up. So, I've not been watching the situation closely enough to really have a super intelligent take, but there's a lot of things that are kind of giving me pause that there could be some weakness in the China economy. And that'd be, certainly bad news for BYD and all the suppliers over there. And, Tesla seems to be in a relatively better position, but still, I doubt they'd get out of some supply chain collapse unscathed. So I'm certainly not hoping for BYD's collapse by any means.
I think it's a really bad setup for Chinese automakers. Essentially, all these different cities have a favored automaker. So like Shanghai has probably more than one. Shanghai is pretty big, but all these other cities have a automaker that they've sponsored. So they may have given them land, given them other benefits, given them loans. And so these other companies, they're not being run profitably. It's the cities have sponsored them. The cities want them to work, but the companies aren't suddenly profitable. They're not being well run. This seems like a really bad recipe where you have cities that are uncritical as far as investors or sponsors, and basically goosed all these companies. You have way too many companies. There's over 80 EV companies. None of them, as we know, are profitable making full battery electric vehicles.
Yeah, you need some consolidation in this space. I mean, that's one of the great things about capitalism, and it might sound a little heartless to say, but like you need the underperforming companies to go bankrupt to kind of clear some of the chaff out and allow the market to be as efficient as possible. If you got a bunch of different entities subsidizing a bunch of different entities, and that you don't really have to make a profit, you will naturally just become a bit bloated and not as competitive as you otherwise would be if you need to fight for your survival as an entity. So like that's one of the best things about capitalism, and I think when you do have so much sponsorship of these entities, like you kind of need a recession, or like a kind of like the way a forest fire will roll through and make the soil and everything more fruitful for future generations of growth. Like you need those economic cycles to come in so that like the companies that are gritty enough to survive something like that, and they offer a product that's compelling enough to thrive in a super competitive environment, then they'll survive and be able to scale and scale more efficiently than if you had this just like conglomeration of 20 different companies all trying to fight for the same pie being subsidized. I mean, it kind of reminds me too of like what's going on with Waymo. Like Waymo's business model just makes no sense. But Google is like funded it because like the technology worked at scale, and so like, all right, well we'll continue to scale it up and we'll continue to fund it, and then eventually we'll figure out down the road how to make it profitable. If they had to like raise money from third-party sources, I don't think they'd be allowed to expand and burn money as aggressively as they are. Then when you have like this third-party Tesla come in and just say, we've got to figure out how to do this profitably from the get-go, and they do, like, for all the reasons you outlined earlier in here. It's like, okay, yeah, that's the business model that works. And LiDAR was a crutch. When Elon said that back in 2017, he was right. But he's only now getting, the kind of validation that, taking the harder path, as he said way back in 2017, of like a vision only based neural network, where you solve for all these problems that LiDAR is a crutch for, like, depth perception and mapping and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
When you take that super hard approach, then you've solved for the goal maximum, as opposed to the local maximum. So that's a rather long ranting answer, but yeah, subsidies don't work.
Yeah, so let me take it to Waymo. We'll take it away from China now. So I think Waymo and all this, I think when Tesla surpasses the number of vehicles that Waymo has, and maybe they do it by year end, so they do it in less than a 6-month period, I think Waymo's going to come under tremendous pressure to change how they're going about the technology of autonomous driving. Google does have a tremendous amount of compute available to them. They have the YouTube platform, so they have a lot going on with video. I think they'll come under pressure to take a vision-only approach and to take an end-to-end AI approach with it as well. But they still don't quite have the data to the extent that Tesla does. But I think they're going to be forced to make a change. I think the prize is so big that Google isn't just going to give up as soon as Tesla, easily passes them. So I think they'll keep going with it, but they're a number of years behind Tesla, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, like, the funny thing is, like, maybe Tesla reaches their scale by year end, but then they might be like 100x their scale, by the end of 2026. Like it's not like, ooh, Tesla's got the lead, and then like Waymo comes back, and then Tesla, like, they're like
Good point.
two companies that are like duking it out. It's like, no, like, Tesla will have like a 10x and then a 100x advantage, and they'll be able to undercut Waymo's price like at will in any market that they want. So, like, I agree with you that like Google's probably gonna want to try to pivot, but I don't. Okay, like, good luck with that, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, when you start doing the actual math on the Robotaxi unit economics, and say, okay, you got a $150,000 car. Start with just that assumption. You've already lost the race. All right, so like, you got to throw that out. So then you go vision only. All right, you still have to buy the car from a third party. So let's say Tesla can buy a car or manufacture a car for $30,000. All right, now, like, maybe you can buy a cheap one and put in like the chips and everything that you need and the cameras for 40,000, maybe, if you're like,
yeah.
All right, so you're still 10,000 to the worse. Your efficiency, your electric efficiency is still going to be worse. You're not going to have the data advantage. So presumably your user experience, meaning like the quality of your ride, the safety of it, the comfort of it, is not going to be as good as Tesla's for a long time.
Yeah.
So like, what are they actually competing on other than like Google's balance sheet being able to subsidize them for a while? Like, seriously, like, what advantage do they have at all?
Yeah, I think it's Google's balance sheet, and I don't think it's like they have many advantages, but I don't think they're going to give up. It's quite an attractive market if they can figure it out, and Tesla is showing the way, so they may switch now. Like, I think now is the time they should be switching. If they're not, like, they should have switched before now, and not now, but. So we do this every Tuesday at 4 p.m., rain or shine. He's Matt Smith. I'm Bradford Ferguson. We covered quite the gambit today, from Iran to Tesla to Waymo to Chinese EVs and the battery market. And with that, I'm going to say bye for now.
Bye for now.